Okay, was there life found on Mars? No, there wasn't. Sorry about that. But there is something that may imply that there's life there. We're going to talk about that in a second. And we're also talking about today a new plane that's planned to be sent to Mars, an ancient flying lizard that was found, a new conservation area in San Francisco, and we'll wrap up the show today with 5 climate highlights from the year. This is Eco Show. Hello and welcome to Eco Show. This is a show about ecology, the environment, and things generally related to that. We'll talk about a whole bunch of different topics each time and try to keep it pretty interesting. But this is kind of our Mars episode this week. There are a few cool articles about Mars exploration that I saw this week. So the first one we're talking about is sort of about finding life on Mars. And in particular, it's around this lake that was found on Mars. So there's an ancient lake bed that was found on Mars, and it may hold evidence of life. So there was this rover that was sent over to Mars called the Perseverance rover, and it confirmed pretty much that this crater was a lake and had water because of sediment that's left at the base. So there's the image that I'll put up shows this scanning that it was able to do using ground penetrating radar. So in order to see that there was a lake there that had water feeding into it, you can see how the sediments are layered in a flat layer, and that with fluctuating flow from incoming rivers, there would have been different sediment layers. And so that's what this ground penetrating radar on this rover was able to find. The rover has been there since 2021, and it will be a future expedition that will bring back samples from this. So then it will take samples from this lake to see if there was life there or not. I'm not too sure of if there's river-like things on any other planets. I think Mercury is just really hot. Venus is really hot as well. So it would be interesting to see how this goes. I love research about Mars is always really cool. It's sort of that kind of research that just expands your mind a little bit. And I know it can feel hard to justify spending all this money going to Mars and doing these expeditions and stuff like that. But if anything, for me, yeah, it's tricky, right? But we're spending so much money on, because the thing that is easy to do is be like, oh, should we be spending this money on other things? Yes. But I think there's worse things we spend money on than space exploration, So instead of saying we should give up space exploration so that we can make sure people are fed, make sure people are housed, maybe we could try and decrease military spending first. So decrease military spending first, and then if that's not enough, then we can cut into the space budget. But space is cool. You learn so much by doing these big missions. I wouldn't want to live on Mars, but it still is really exciting information to be found. And continuing on with news from Mars, they're planning to send an airplane to Mars. It's going to be a vertical takeoff airplane, and it has funding already approved from NASA. It will be ready in 6 years, apparently. And The plane is called MAGGIE, which stands for Mars Aerial Ground Global Intelligent Explorer. Mars Aerial and Ground Global Intelligent Explorer. So it's covered in solar panels, and it will be able to fly at over 100 miles per hour at 3,300 feet. So it will be able to fly up in the atmosphere. And we talked about this Perseverance rover, and along with that, there was a sort of a drone helicopter that went out with it, and it was collecting flight and atmospheric data. So there's a drone with the Perseverance rover. It went up and learned a lot about the atmosphere so they could design a plane that would be suited to the atmosphere. This drone did 30 flights. I was thinking about it. I was like, this could be a cute and really sad cartoon movie of this drone and Perseverance, the rover, them both going out to Mars, being close friends, and then this drone did 30 flights, and just thinking about it going out for its 30th flight and being like, this is the last of my battery. It's going to make me cry just thinking about it. Having to separate. Anyways, that's a good movie idea. It made me think of like that Toaster movie. Okay, so this atmosphere is 160 times thinner than Earth, so that gives you way different considerations for how to design a plane. And this plane is going to be able to provide some high resolution data on parts of Mars, like ice on the ice caps, which we have some information on, but apparently this would be more interesting and higher resolution data to get. So pretty cool to think about having a plane flying around over down in Mars. I'd love a solar powered plane. Yeah, why can't we have a solar powered plane? I mean, it's not going to be carrying a lot of stuff, but that would be pretty cool. Okay, from Mars back to Earth, but similarly, Mars and dinosaurs for some reason are in the same part of my brain, kind of thing. This isn't technically a dinosaur, but there was a flying ancient lizard that was found, and it's called a kuniosaur. And this was from 200 million years ago. And the way that it would fly, or glide really, is it had skin which stretched out of the sides of it from rib bones. So it had the skin that it could use to glide from tree to tree. And this discovery was found by a master's student. So very cool. Good for students to be finding these things. I wasn't sure if this was like totally, if they'd never found something like this before, or if it's just very rare, but pretty cool to think about. Even though I guess wings are kind of, wings are coming out from your body as well. This, thinking about having rib bones that come out to give your skin like something to glide with. It sounds pretty gnarly. I'd be freaked out that they would just break, But maybe that's just because of my own weight. Okay. And now from the lizard to the not lizard. Well, let's take a quick break. So this you could be watching on YouTube. You could be listening to it via podcast in podcast form. So there's many ways to enjoy the show. There's also a TikTok and a Facebook. If you use those a lot, you can find those mostly via the Instagram page, which I've sort of moved things over and made a new Instagram page. So it's just ecoshowpod is the link for this. And my personal Instagram is henryfromnature. So you can follow as many or as few as you like. But we'll sort of, that's sort of the hub where you can find links and things, where I post short clips and do some interacting and stuff like that. Okay, that's it. That's the shout out for the show. And so there's this new San Francisco park that's going to be conserved, which is pretty groovy. There was a nonprofit that bought a 3,500 acre ranch near San Jose in the Bay Area, and they will convert it to a nature preserve with trails for hikers. It's a critical habitat area and will connect the Bay Area Ridge Trail. So this is in an important area where it will be connecting existing biodiversity areas and all of that sort of thing. It was bought because it's important and connects these things, but also to make sure that it was not developed. It was bought for $16 million. They got a big discount. It was going to be sold for $35 million. I think the group that bought the land initially bought it for $25 million or something like that a few years back, and have sold it for $16 million. So that's kind of nice that they, sold it for less than they bought it for. The area around it has species like puma, American badger, elk, bobcat, gray fox, and coyote. And so there will be a nice connecting area for all of these different species, and will be used for I just heard something outside. And we'll connect things up. It's initially going to be owned. It's sort of a non-profit that's gone and bought it, but they just got it so that it can then be so then when the county is able to get enough money from them, they'll buy it back off of them. So a good little restoration area. Should have written down the name, but if you're in that area, you can go check it out at some time. I was initially, when I was reading this, I was like, oh, I don't know, because it was a ranch that was going to be, that they're buying to restore, and it's good to restore land for sure. I'm definitely a fan of restoration, but if it's good pasture land as well, that's kind of a tricky decision to make. But it sounds like this area was gonna be, there was a high likelihood that it was gonna be developed. So I'm always a fan of stopping that from happening. Okay, and on to our last little piece. We've got a little roundup, a nice news piece from the Good News Network, and they put together 5 good climate news things. So these are just little short tidbits that we'll put on here at the end of the show. So the first thing they put down is that there's been a big investment in solar over the past year. China had a 30% rise year after year. And the photo that they had, I don't know if I have it here, but the photo that they had of the solar panel layout, like, pretty gnarly. It's just like, that's another one of those things that's tricky with solar uses. Where are you putting this? I know they've got a lot of desert where they can put out these things, but anywho, big increase in solar, which is very good. And our second little nice headline is that at the Conference of Parties last year, which is, I believe, an annual conference where they are meant to be figuring out climate change, but they don't really do that. 200 countries agreed to triple global renewable energy capacity. So that's nice, but the big countries really need to get on board with creating these changes. And the issue with this COP thing is there's so much influence from industry now. They've really got embedded in it. I think it was either this past year or the year before, there were more industry representatives than there were governmental representatives. So, they've got the money to try and slow, if not halt or reverse, renewable changes as much as possible. Our third article, third little hot tip is that there was a drop in United States coal use. So there's a continued drop in coal use despite the war in Ukraine, which has sort of caused issues for energy supply to Europe, but has not really impacted the US. And they're just still getting in the data, but they're expecting that coal use will have dropped by about 20% this past year. Coal can cause localized issues with pollution and just release fossil fuel greenhouse gases as well. So coal isn't very fun. So this is nice to see. China unfortunately rose by 5%, but they're sort of expecting that they're pretty much getting to the peak level of coal use, and it's expected that they'll be phasing out coal use pretty soon. The fourth highlight was that there are more EV cars coming out, and they're getting cheaper to make, so they're getting more popular. There are lots of charging stations for them and things like that. Talk about every once in a while they have new forms of recycling them as well and things like that. So that's kind of the main thing I'm thinking about is how well are they going to be able to recycle these things. Hopefully they do a good job with that. And our last little highlight is that Southeast Asia is cleaning up their energy sector. So they typically use a lot of coal there, and which is not good again for local environments and for climate change, but they're really increasing the use of renewables in a big way. So this will definitely be a big impact. And this is sort of an issue that's been talked about, is that developing countries are in this tricky situation where they typically need to expend a lot of energy to lead to different development and things like that. But then it's oftentimes with cheaper fuels, which can be damaging and things like that. I mean, it should be, we've got a lot of capacity for renewables, and most definitely these big countries should be paying for it. It's going to be, this whole thing is just, it's such an economic issue. It's so hard when everybody's trying to get a leg up on one another. There's not really money is not used in a way in general that is beneficial for people. For the most part, it is extractive. But I mean, it's nice, I don't think money is a bad thing necessarily, having something to signify the work that you've done and then using it to exchange for other things. But these financial systems, dude, don't know what to do about it. Anywho, we'll get there. We haven't had our current economic system forever, so we may have a different one at some point. And until then, we should probably learn about it. I should probably have a better idea of why it's so doing the things that it does. Anywho, that's the show for today. Thanks for checking in. Hope you have a great week. Check out the Instagram. Send through any requests for articles that you'd like covered, or any cool local eco news from where you are, and I'll shout it out on the show. Have a great day, and we'll catch you soon. Bye-bye.